Hello everyone. For my final project entitled Blacklisted, I looked at how race is depicted and defined through media, especially when it comes to racially charged crimes. The main problem that I am reviewing through my paper is how persistent racial prejudice exists among white Americans, and African Americans are often characterized as violent and aggressive. And news disproportionately depicts racial and ethnic minorities as criminal suspects and whites as victims. I saw through just viewing past research and even through my own research how blacks are often characterized as the criminal or the perpetrator through media, and how that goes to define how we view race in our society and how that also causes racial tension. So, racially charged crimes in media, the past. Through my paper, I kind of take it as a historical timeline, if you will, and show just how race is depicted in the past and how it has been depicted now in the present. So, in 1955, the murder of Emmett Till. The basic backstory behind the Emmett Till case is that Emmett Till whistled at a white American woman, and he was murdered for it. And it was well known because of the media coverage that it got, and many accounts of the murder were based on eyewitness interviews. A lot of people interviewed his cousins who were with him at the time, the actual people that killed him who admitted to killing him, as well as the woman who he whistled at. And the most well-known account was in 1956. Look magazine did an account of the Emmett Till murder, which is seen here to the right of the screen, and it was heavily disputed by witnesses. The author of it, Mr. Huey, wrote that he actually got sources and information from Emmett Till's cousins, and basically that his account of the story would outline how Emmett Till was acting before he went into the store, during the store, and how everything happened once he was murdered. And it got heavily disputed because Emmett Till's cousins came out later to other news outlets, such as the Chicago Tribune, saying that they never spoke to this man, and that the story was told differently than what actually happened that night. And it just shows how race and social justice can be perceived based on who is telling the story. So a lot of backlash came from the story because, as I stated before, it wasn't how people that witnessed the actual murder viewed the story, and media kind of created a different way of narrating the story to its audience. So for my own research, I looked at the murder of Michael Brown, which happened earlier this year. The backstory behind that was that, based on just various accounts, the only thing that can really be agreed upon was that a white American officer, Darren Wilson, killed an unarmed African American man, Michael Brown. And it's well known for its coverage because instead of it being through our traditional outlets such as newspapers and television, it's mainly being told through social media. On the right here, I have a picture of how this story kind of originally broke. This is an eyewitness account of somebody who allegedly says that they were there when this murder occurred, and just giving their backstory and giving their firsthand account. And many of the accounts of this murder has been based on eyewitness accounts, videos of Michael Brown once he was killed in the street, and testimony that was offered by Darren Wilson as he just faced a grand jury here recently. And the details of the murder are unknown fully because of the varying testimony. For instance, eyewitnesses have said that some have said that his hands were up when he was shot. Others have said his hands were down. Some said he was running away from Darren Wilson. Some say that he was running towards Darren Wilson and charging at him. So it's just interesting to see how, although it's years later, just how race is depicted through the media, and kind of how the varying accounts can show just how we can perceive race and perceive social justice. In the final slide, I just really wanted to show how race is defined by media and just how they go about really defining who is the victim in each of these crimes. In the headline in 1955, it reads, "Nation Shocked, Vow Action and Lynching of Chicago Youth." So while there was varying accounts of what happened on the night that Emmett Till was murdered and how race and social action was defined based solely on who was telling the story, it did in fact frame that Emmett Till was a victim, and it did help to kickstart the civil rights movement and really looking at the issue of race and social equality. Well, in 2014, the New York Times was criticized for their headlines outlining the Michael Brown case. Two lives at a crossroads in Ferguson, a low-profile police officer with unsettled early days, and the second headline read, "A teenager grappling with problems and promise." So with this, it's almost not defined who the victim is, because in the article or the column on the left-hand side, it shows that Darren Wilson had problems in his early days with the police force, how he was low profile, and this was kind of the first high-profile crime or case that he was a part of, where it showed Michael Brown being a teenager, which kind of goes to show he didn't have as much responsibility, say, as an adult or a police officer, and showing that he had problems and he's struggling with promise. And it's almost hard for the audience or the viewer to really define or figure out who is the victim in this case. So I just thought it was interesting how they went about framing race and how they framed a white American versus how they framed an African American. And hopefully through the rest of my graduate coursework, I can continue looking at the issue of race and seeing how it's defined in media, especially with this becoming more common with more cases like this happening here in present day. So I hope that I can continue uncovering more information about it and learning more about this topic.